Hey friends, and welcome to the new year. Hope you're doing well. And of course, as always, if not, it's okay. We don't always have to be doing well. I've been thinking about life a lot lately and just the amount of overwhelm and stress, especially as we get older and have more, responsibilities. The stress, the fears, the money, finances. There's so many things to think about. And no matter what philosophy on life you might have, I think there are still these sort of real, tangible things that every human experiences. Now, of course, you could go become a Buddhist monk and live in the mountains and just pray all day, and maybe that's a very different experience. But if we're trying to live some way in the modern world, even if we're more integrated in nature, like we're trying to do over here, there's still a lot of things to think about. And I realized that I tend to present this idea that, I've got it all figured out, or everything just makes perfect sense. And the truth is that while I mostly feel and embody that way, I still have fears, and I've worked through so much stuff over the years that life has just become a lot easier for me, but it doesn't mean that it's constantly this simple experience where I'm always making sense of everything in such a way where I don't have concerns or worries. Now, what shifted is that when I kind of went on this awakening journey, I was able to separate, my thoughts and ideas and ego from just the truth of who I am in that connection. But being in the modern world, there's this kind of wave I find that happens where you're like, maybe, you have this understanding of this deeper, we're all connected, everything's one, universal trust, guidance, God, whatever it might be. And it's beautiful. And then there's also this piece of like the ego character trying to get in, trying to kind of claw and grasp and hang on for dear life, as they say. So the reason I bring this up is because, even myself, who have been on this path for a long time, I still have moments where I go into fear and moments where I get confused and try to overplan or control. Now, those moments are much shorter and they go through me much quicker. I don't harp on them for days and days and make them ruin my life, but they're still there. They still come up. And now that since I've gone through this process, I can see them and be like, oh, I see what you're doing. I see what the brain's doing. Let me just kind of like look at that, recognize it, and let it go. So, the first thing I want to say is that no matter what situation you're in or what's going on, we exist as humans in this human realm right now. So yes, we can try to transcend and find ecstasy and oneness and all have all these highs and peaks. And yet, we're in this human body for the time being. And I think, whatever we consider death, even though no one really knows exactly what it is, to me, death is just the death of the ego. And if the physical body dies, it's just maybe the release of all that. And the transcendence will happen. So we don't have to force it here. We can exist in life and we can feel pain and sadness and love and doubt and loss and attachment and fear and all the things. The difference is that when you go on this path and this journey, you're not trying to separate, good feelings from bad feelings, as though it's like, I need to feel good all the time. I need to be inspired all the time, and when I'm down, that's a problem. I need to fix it. Rather, you're aware that humans exist as a spectrum of emotion, of awareness, of feelings, of all these things, and to actually accept those things is quite beautiful. That's why they say, enlightenment, like I think if you really study with the people that seem to really get it, it's bittersweet. It's not just this constant high. And in our world, we're constantly, putting gurus on pedestals, and we're seeing these people as like above us. And the guru, they have the hat and the beard, and we look at them in a certain way, and it's so easy to praise them and to want to be them. But as you see with most gurus, people don't get there because most of it's just marketing. It's presenting this image of how it should be, and they can talk the talk and sit there, but we don't actually know what's going on in their life. So I saw myself going down that path, and there were times where people were calling me their guru, or I thought we were like in a cult in Brooklyn or whatever it was, and it just, something about it never felt right. I was like, whoa, don't follow me. I'm not pretending to have all the answers. Rather, I'm just on the path, and I'm always looking, and I'm always bringing in mindfulness and awareness to everything I do. Because from that perspective, everything is a meditation. Life is a constant meditation when you're present. Now, if we look at these peak experiences, if we look at these, quote unquote, higher state God consciousness moments, and we think that's the state to be in, and we're always grasping, well, it's probably just going to create more of these lower lows. Because what we think of as the transcended state on earth, when we look at the guru and they're very peaceful and they're, quietly talking and they're offering these things, and we think that that's what we need to be, well, we end up very often mimicking these ideas. Instead of actually embodying what makes sense to us, we start to try to copy someone. And that's like any kind of marketplace where you see something outside of yourself. You see a celebrity drinking Sprite and they look healthy and good, and you're like, oh, let me go out and get some Sprite. And if I drink it and I put on this kind of shirt and wear a chain, I must whatever. And what we're doing is we're creating a sense of mimicry instead of actually embodying the deeper wisdom. So this is something I've learned early on from practicing Buddhism. We can try to mimic the Buddha, and we can say, oh, it's funny, whenever I make videos now, I keep hitting this thing. Let me just move this for now. We can embody this state of like, oh, the Buddha, he's very peaceful, he's calm, he wears sandals, he only eats a grain of rice, at a time, whatever it is, and try to mimic that and say, well, I did all the things he did, why aren't I feeling any sense of peace? To me, all the external physical things, that's what's superficial. That's actually not what's going to get you to where you want to go. Rather, we have to recognize that there is no one right way. There is no, this is what you should eat, this is what you should do, this is what you should say. And if you do that, then you'll be in some place. And rather recognize that we're all in our own unique situation. And even though we're connected, in very simple energetic frequencies, from our experience of life and from what you're seeing, like when you're watching this video, it's making you think about a lot of different things, making you feel things based on your thoughts, your experiences, your stories, all the different things that have happened in your life that lead you to this moment are engaging with the way that I'm saying things, and you're interpreting it a certain way. Even if I say something that to me makes perfect sense, it might come out to you like blasphemy or might upset you or something like that. And so that's not my intention. I can't decide once the words leave my mouth how they're going to affect you. So rather than trying to point the finger at me or other people and say, well, you this, or you that, or trying to mimic and, well, they're that and they're that, how can we actually start to turn back in to what makes sense to our own experience? This is something that I've noticed with, like a lot of people are getting to the AI stuff right now, and ChatGPT, it's gonna change the world and it's gonna revolutionize how we do this and that and the other thing. And yeah, there are amazing elements to it. I've been actually messing around with it for almost a year at this point, and I've utilized it in certain ways. But what I've seen is it's a conglomeration of everything that everyone's ever thought or felt, or experienced, put into this model. And it's still giving you some sort of bias. It's still giving you some sort of experience and saying, okay, here's this truth in this context. But to me, what makes life special is all those nuanced things that words can't actually explain. So far as words and text and images and things go, it can generate stuff, but the real juice of life is in the felt experience, is in the, oh, I'm just awareness. I can't know anything other than I am. There's lots of factual information out there. There's lots of subjective information. And, in this system of 1 + 1, it = 2. But outside of these human-made constructs and these words that we use, there is so much more that exists in this sphere of presence and awareness. So when you start to go on this journey and realize, wait, everything's made up. It's all completely made up. Every thought, idea, belief, they're all beliefs. They're all things that people have said, and they might be true in a moment, but they could change tomorrow. And if that belief changes, where are we left with? So when you start to realize that all beliefs aren't true, everything's made up, it doesn't actually make the world worse or make it more fake in a sense. To me, it allows for this immense sense of freedom, because suddenly it's like, wait, I just exist. I don't have to define myself by my job or by my bank account or by my friends or relationships. I can recognize that I exist, and from that place, if there's some desire that I have or a preference, I might go out and create that, or be excited about, oh, what if I do this thing? Or I'm really passionate about, for me, it's like being outside and working with nature and playing music and cooking and fermenting and all this stuff. I might have had the desire to share that. However, I'm never attaching those things as though this is who I am and I need these things to be fulfilled. If I don't, garden every day, then I'm not going to be fulfilled. Or if I, don't raise animals or whatever it might be, because no single thing identifies anyone. Now, in the modern world, that's how everything is set up. This is Jim Johnson, he's a lawyer and he works at this firm and makes this much money a year and lives on this street, and everything's very segregated. But all those things can go away. He could lose his job, he could lose his money, lose his home, and yet, is he still Jim Johnson? Who is he? And these are the bigger questions that I always enjoy pondering. Now, in my case, I did, lose my job. Well, I left my business many years ago with Brothers Green. I, left my partner at the time, my house, my dog, everything was gone. And yet I felt this immense sense of freedom because I knew that I had myself. Even though a lot of the material things were gone and things that I had worked really hard to obtain and worked on, and I had a home, and we built this insane garden and put in so much energy and effort and love into that space, and it's gone. And yet the experience, the information, the knowledge, all the things that I obtained from that, are within me in some way. And what I realize is, like, no matter what, as long as I have myself, I'll be okay. All the material things can kind of hold this weight. It's like, there's a fear most people have because they're like, well, I'm Jim Johnson and I have this job, and if I lose it, it's all going to fall apart because this is what defines me, or this thing, relationship, friendship, whatever it is. When we recognize that there are all these physical things manifesting from some very simple energetic space, well, suddenly there's an immense amount of peace that comes over. And I bring this up because, yes, I sometimes still have fears and sometimes I still get confused and try to control things, but I know that's all the illusion. I know that's the conditioned piece of me that's just continually falling and melting away. I don't judge it. I don't get mad about it. I don't say I shouldn't do this. I need to fix it. I just become aware of it and I allow it to slowly melt away. So if you're someone who's trying to make sense of life and what other people are providing out there just doesn't feel aligned, it just doesn't feel right. It's one of these, lose 30 pounds in 30 days or do this spiritual practice and you'll be happy and enlightened. To me, that's all the illusion. It's Maya, that she's the master of illusion, and she's trying to convince us that these external things are what are going to fulfill us or give us some sort of clarity. But she's doing it, I think, to test us, to see what actually makes sense. Can we actually go inward in ourselves and know what makes sense in a moment? Because truth is always changing. There's the infinite truth of I am and presence, but actual, factual-based truth and evidence and science, proven this, that stuff is constantly changing all the time. And if we grip onto something as though it's just forever, we're always going to be confused and lost. So if we can find the eternal truth within and recognize that we're just awareness having an experience in this life, well, then things just start to make more sense. And for me, what I always go off of is what makes sense. What is usually the most simple thing? And from that place of this makes perfect sense to me, I might take an action. I might go left or go right. And then if it turns out that is no longer makes sense, I'm not holding on because I know it's all impermanent. There's nothing that I can grab onto or grasp onto that is forever. And it's that foreverness that the Buddha talked about that creates the suffering, the idea that there's these things we can grab onto and that they will always be there. Even our bodies, our identities, our jobs, our money, all the things, they're impermanent. So how can we live in this way of impermanence and let go of things when they're no longer serving us, and also give ourselves to something when it feels really aligned? I have no problem giving myself to love and connection and to appreciation. We're getting ready to have a baby. There's going to be a lot around impermanence and connection and, and control and all these things. And yet, can I fully give myself to this child and raise them in a beautiful way and recognize at some point, they're their own creature and they're going to go off and do their own thing. And if I make it, my purpose is just to raise a child and that's that, well, at some point when they go off and live their own life and they're not a child anymore, what's that going to mean for me? So I do feel really connected and excited about raising, children and imbuing whatever wisdom I have and nurturing and sharing in this loving space. And also I know that there's no thing that defines me and that it's not like my duty or my mission to this, that, or the other thing. I'm just existing and being present and recognizing what makes sense. And if something makes sense, I'll follow it until something else makes more sense. So, yeah, it's pretty much all we know. Take care.